This is the teacher's guide about what a value scale can teach us about the Mona Lisa, one of the projects in the Arts Matter curriculum. Let's dive in. So this is a value scale, and from this we can see that there are, number 1 is the lightest value, and 2 gets a little darker, and so on and so forth till you get to 5, and that's black, or the darkest dark. And where you have areas that are close in value, for instance 2 and 3, that creates low contrast. If you have an instance where you have a white next to a black, that creates an area of high contrast. Now, why is this important to us as artists? Because artists know that when you have areas of high contrast, that the eye is attracted to that place. So the artist makes choices about where he or she puts the highest contrast so that our eye is attracted to that area. Let's take a look at maybe the most famous painting in the world, the Mona Lisa by Leonardo. And when we first look at the painting, most people are immediately attracted to what? Her face. Okay, the famous smile, the famous eyes of the Mona Lisa. And what did Leonardo do to bring our attention right there? He placed the darkest dark in the painting, her hair, right around the lightest, brightest area of the painting, her face, riveting our attention in that area. What we're going to do is create our own value scale by replicating the value of each of the parts of the scale. So we're going to create a number 1 value, and that's very simple because it's white of the paper. But we're going to create 2, 3, 4, and 5 with paint. So I've got my trusty paper towel, some water, and a brush, and I have white tempera paint and black tempera paint. And in this case, we're going to create a monochromatic value scale, and we're going to paint with an opaque paint application, and that means it's going to be the opposite of transparent. It's not see-through. It's going to cover the paper completely. So I'm going to start with white paint as I attempt to recreate the number 2 value. It's a very light gray, isn't it? So I'm going to put a bunch of white paint on my paper plate palette and clean off my brush and take a tiny amount of black and mix it in. Now what I need to do is add a little bit more black to my mixture, my gray mixture, my number 2 gray mixture, until I have what I think is a good number 3. Now, I think that that's a little too light, so I'm going to add a touch more of the black. So I'm going to paint that in this square. So now I need to create a 4. So I'm going to put quite a bit more black into the puddle of gray that I've been using. And I don't think that's enough. That doesn't seem dark enough to me, so I'm going to add another brush load. And guess what number 5 is? It's just pure black. So I'm going to just go right into my black paint and get a nice thick application of black tempera paint. Okay? So I've created my value scale, and now what I want to do is see if I can apply this understanding to the Mona Lisa. So let's look at the Mona Lisa again. I understand that this is somewhere around a 1 or possibly some areas of shadow or 2 value, her face. And then around her face, her hair, is really, probably value number 5. So our task now is to study what the choices Leonardo made in his value structure And this is called creating a grisé, which is a monochromatic underpainting. And truly, that's what Leonardo did. Before he painted the Mona Lisa in color, he created a grisé on his canvas underneath the colored pigments, so that he totally understood where the lights and darks and midtones were going, so that the eye was attracted exactly where he wanted it to go. So I'm going to begin creating my own grisé of the Mona Lisa, and keeping in mind the areas of the darkest dark and the lightest light. I'll probably paint those areas first. And then I see behind her face that there are areas of midtones, lighter areas that are kind of like a 2 on our value scale. And maybe some darker areas that are, maybe number 3, and maybe there's some 4s in here. So I'm going to be asking myself to paint on top of those areas, reflecting the values that I identify and see in the Mona Lisa. So let's get started. I'm going to first paint her face. Okay, and I'm not looking for a perfect copy of the Mona Lisa. Who could do that, right? But I'm looking to study the value structure. Okay, so it's not going to look just like the Mona Lisa, but you'll get the idea of it. So I'm painting right on top of the eyes and the mouth, and maybe a little bit of gray for the nose. And now I'm going to paint black for the hair. Just going to go right on top of this and paint what I think is the darkest dark in the painting, which is her hair and the shadow underneath her face. And the idea here is just to see what we can learn about how Leonardo structured this painting and structured the lights and the darks. Now I kind of see that there's a shadow on the side of her face, so I'm going to add some of this gray I mixed up before. It's kind of like a number 4 gray. It's kind of like a bit of a shadow on that side of her face, so I'm going to add that. And then again, we're back to the light. Perhaps in this case it's a value 2. And her dress is again got lots of darks in it. So I'm going to paint her hands next, kind of again, kind of a 2 value, 2 going to 3. And you see how they do stand out, and lots of black at the bottom. So now I've got the background to look at, and I can see that there's quite a light area, but still it's not white. It's a light gray area in the background. So I'm just following the pattern of lights and darks that I see. Here's a little path. It's a little bit lighter. I think that we can say that I've gotten the idea of what Leonardo had in mind when he envisioned the value structure for the Mona Lisa. This will give your students a good idea of the importance of the arrangement of lights and darks and values in a painting, not only in a masterpiece like the Mona Lisa, but in fact in all paintings and photographs and in films too. So that's how we use value scales. Remember, arts matter.